Joining me in studio, candidate for Congressional District 19, Greg Garrett. How you doing this morning, Greg?
Great, Steve. Thank you for having me on.
We had Dorinda in this morning and got some of her thoughts, and I'll lead you out the same way I did her. We've got a large field of candidates out there. It's massive. It's great. I love it. It's an awesome race. I'm really interested in it. We have some guys that have some political capital. They've got some experience. So, and we have a very large group that doesn't. So, you come in from a background in banking and no political experience whatsoever. Tell us about yourself and you know, your plans. How do you intend to shine and make yourself different?
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity. And before I forget, I want to tell everybody Merry Christmas. I hope everybody enjoys their family time and a little time to get some rest. One of the things I'll tell you is I have never been a politician. I am a businessman. I live here in the West Texas area and love the big country also. I'll say this, I feel like it's time for us to have someone who understands business, go to DC and make a difference. You know, a few things that might set me apart is, I have started a bank. You know, I started a bank 6 months before the biggest recession, in 07, hit in December of 08. Started a little branch bank over here. It was $60 million on the corner of Sly and the Loop. You know, it started at $60 million and we've, you know, not every year's been easy, but today we're $250 million and we're 5 locations in 5 different cities. You know, we've grown from basically starting no capital to over $30 million in capital. And I built a business that we now have over $4 million a year in a payroll. So, I understand business. I understand separation of duties. I understand common sense business principles that obviously are not happening in DC. I think we're all frustrated. I think it's just common sense. We're all frustrated with both Democrats and Republicans. You know, this $1.1 million bill that they just passed, people are livid about. We should have never, ever considered it. And it's time for a change. It's time for us to get up there and make a difference.
I couldn't agree with you more. $60 million, that's not a lot of money in the banking world, is it? It's not. You know,
$60 million is a start. Banks today basically have to exceed $100 million. You know, the compliance rules are so severe. You know, if you have a bank, you're federally regulated. We got FDIC. Insurance. You'll notice about 300 banks are going away today. It's interesting that 10 years ago there were about 1,500 banks. Today there's 680 banks. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting fact that, the last time you see branches everywhere, so everybody thinks, there's one on every corner. Last time there were this few banks, actually charter was 1891. So, it's kind of like the farmer. It's unfortunate. I'm worried about the industry. I'm worried about agriculture.
Yeah, and let me steer you that way. I have no doubt that you know about banking, and we could talk all day about that. But let's talk about something else that it doesn't have to do with banking, and let's jump into agriculture. Do you have any thoughts on we've got cotton farmers out here, and there's two schools of thought. The insurance programs, maybe we need more. There's farmers that have said if we could just get the price of cotton up and get rid of all the federal subsidies, and I could stand on my own 2 feet, I'd be for that too. But we can't seem to do either one, and these guys are they're forced to live off of insurance, and frankly, when their averages start to go down, they're going broke. What do we do to help the farmer? We are an ag business. My family is supported by ag. This is an ag area.
Absolutely. Cotton is king. Our bank's farmers. I have a vested interest. We have a bank in Levelland. And we're both in the oil and gas, being in Midland, Odessa, locations. So obviously agriculture is a huge deal to us. There have been some representatives that have come out and said that, hey, we can separate the farm bill and make it different from the welfare bill. If you look at the number of votes when they tried to do it a few years ago, it's absolutely impossible. We did not need to allow that to even think about. If we do that, we lose the farm bill. We have got to protect the farmer. We got to protect his water rights. We got to protect the ability for him to move his land from one generation to the other. We've got to make sure he's protected, that we have a level playing field. I think this insurance program, I don't think anybody really knows that it helped any at all. I think it was just put in there to please some folks. And I think we need to go back to a targeted level playing field. But otherwise, how are we going to compete against China and India and Brazil that have all these cotton reserves? It's time to make sure that we take care of our farmer. It's one of my first national security issues. I got 4 national security issues, and one of them is ag, and it's huge, and it needs to take top priority. And I will personally promise to be firsthand fully involved and engaged in the Agriculture Committee when I'm elected in D.C.
Okay, so let me ask you a couple questions about that. You said water rights. Is that something that D.C. ought to be concerned with, or is that a state's issue?
That's a state's issue. But the problem is we got so many agencies trying to figure out if we can get water rights and how we do that in the federal government. It all needs to be transferred to the state. That's a Charles Perry does an absolutely awesome job with conducting the business of the state. And I believe if we could transfer that to the state and let him oversee that, we'd all be better off.
I couldn't agree more. The other question I have when we talk about the Farm Bill is SNAP. What do we do with SNAP? Do we leave it alone? Do we try to separate it out of the Farm Bill? What effect does that have? What are your thoughts on SNAP?
On SNAP, I think you got to do something dramatically different than where we are today. I think if we continue down the same path, I think we're in trouble. I think we got to make sure there are drastic changes. I'll tell you, from a SNAP program and just from an overall ag bill, I think we don't have enough involvement in D.C. I mean, I'll say this about agriculture. We don't have enough politicians that understand the ag bills, the concepts, and that will go fight for our farmers and fight for people who produce cotton and make sure that these guys are protected. I'm obviously worried from a banking perspective, one-on-one from a farmer, but I'm even more worried about the industry. Where's the industry headed? If we lose an industry, how does that affect us? It would put us in a major, severe issue. It is a national security concern.
Okay, and it's funny that you mentioned fighting, because it's been kind of the topic I've been screaming about today is fighting. The House of Representatives, the lowly congressman, the junior guy coming in, the freshman, is probably the loneliest seat in the world, I would think. The most ineffective seat that you could possibly dream of. You have zero seniority. You have no friends. You have nothing. You're out on an island. And the only way to gain that, well, there's 2 ways to gain that, is to wait your time or make a deal and try to negotiate and bargain, and you end up selling yourself down the river for somebody else's agenda just to get a few things of your own. Do you feel like someone needs to stay isolated and go fight, or go make a deal? And so that leads me to the question. The question is, how do you become instantly effective when you hit the ground in D.C.?
I absolutely think I've demonstrated it through the baking business. I think if I didn't know how to bring people together and understand complicated issues and bring them into a very simple, realistic idea format, then I shouldn't be the right person to go to D.C. I will tell you that I will stand up and I will have backbone. If there's something that I'm convicted about and it's wrong, it's scripturally wrong, I'm going to stand up and say, hey, I'm the only one, like Ted Cruz did. I'll tell you, I'll be the Ted Cruz of the world, but I will also be the person that can unify people, bring them in, and sit down with them and say, hey, you know what? People are tired of getting nothing done. We're tired of standing on the sidelines. We're tired of saying no. But at the same time, why do you negotiate with these who are non-negotiable? So, there's a fine line. There's a balance. It depends on the issue, depends on where we're at. But we're in a crisis in this country. If we don't get something done, I'm going to tell you, we're not going to be a country anymore. So, let's get something done. Let's get God back in our country first. Before we, we can talk about this all morning. Yeah, I will tell you, I hope that people will look at hearts of our candidates, and I'm sure they all got a good heart. I'm not here to bash any one person or a group, but I'm telling you, look at the heart of people. Look at what they've been involved in. Look at how involved they've been in their church. Look at their faith. Let's look and see who will take the heart of Jesus to D.C. and stand up for God and get him back in our country and our military and our schools.
Yeah, I'm almost speechless. I couldn't agree more. Jody, let's go ahead. Can we go ahead and take a break? We got to take a quick break. I'm Steve Evans in for Chad Hasty. We'll be back in just a minute. Greg Garrett in studio with me, visiting about his position on the issues. He's running for Congressional District 19. We touched on ag, and one thing that Dorinda touched on earlier, and I don't want to overlap you two. You need to stand on your own. But she talked about Title I seed, making cottonseed a Title I category. Are you familiar with this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to put it in. I think all the candidates are going to carry the very same flag for this. We're all going to position ourselves exactly right. I don't think there's going to be a difference between one candidate and the other. We're all in favor of it. We all want to push it. Again, it comes down to being engaged in D.C., being engaged with our community. You know, one of the things I will commit to certainly is to be in every single one of these districts, not just West Texas, maybe where I grew up in a particular city. But I think we need a candidate, and we need somebody who's committed to be in all 29 districts on a regular basis. And that's one thing that I can do, and certainly being a part of it. Yeah, the Title I, yes, we're all going to be in favor of it. We're all going to push it.
Can you explain how it works?
Yeah, I can explain a little bit about the concept is to make sure that the cottonseed, that it's something that the agriculture community needs, and that we've got to have severe help with it. So, yeah, I'm all in favor of it. I don't want to get into all of the gritty details today, but I'd be glad to discuss it at length. I've got about a 5-page memorandum on it. I'll be happy to stick it on my website, Greg Garrett for Congress. Let you guys take a look at it.
That'd be great. I mean, it's become a hot button issue, and I think we need to educate people on it, and we may do it one day, go through it on the show. I had a drive-by caller earlier, and he threw out a lot of issues, but one I picked out off of his list was immigration. Let's talk about your position on immigration. We've got millions of ideas. Donald Trump wants to build a wall. Some people say it's a state problem because it's a state border. Some people say it's the federal government's problem. What's Greg Garrett's answer to immigration? Where do you stand on it? Number one,
it is a federal issue. It is regulated by the federal government. Our Constitution calls to protect the people. I will tell you what I think about immigration, and I'll just ask you this question, Steve. You lock your doors at night?
Absolutely.
I do the same thing. I lock my doors at night. I don't lock my doors at night because I hate the people on the outside. I lock my doors at night because I love people on the inside. And what I'm going to explain to you is I think everybody can buy into the concept that we got to protect our own. We got to make sure that we are protected and that we know who's coming over. I am not in favor one teeny bit about letting people in this country and we don't know who they are. You know, if you look back on TV last 60, 90 days, 120 days, you see these folks coming over. 10 years ago, I'm 56. 10 years ago, you could see folks coming over on their horse and bringing all the stuff that they've got. Now you see young men with backpacks coming over. You know, we're at a war. It's about time Congress confesses that we are in a war with ISIS. We need to eliminate them. We need to make sure we know who's coming over. We need to put people back. You know, these people don't necessarily want to come over and live in our country. They'd love to be back where they're at. We need to make sure there's safe places for those folks. As far as protecting the border, I think that's a number one national security issue. We can bring some of our military that are in other countries, where maybe we're overstaffed or perceived to be overstaffed. The countries that are not our ally, bring them back and help them protect the border. Build a wall if we have to. I'm saying that we need to do whatever it takes to protect the border and protect this country. I will not go to D.C. and there be a problem with ISIS or any other terrorist that comes over here and kills our families or our kids and not be able to look them in the eye and say, I did everything I possibly could. Let me tell you something else I really cannot believe that the federal government has not done. I truly believe that, you know, somebody came and robbed my bank and their parent was sitting out in the car and they drove them off or they had a friend drive them off. You know, they're an accomplice, right? I mean, they're guilty. They go to jail too. Why are we not, as a government, making sure that if families know about this, the kid's over 21 years old and the family is not reporting that their kid has gone off to ISIS or they've got friends that have not been, let's get their computer systems. Let's figure out if they know about this. I'll tell you what, you get families involved. That's a way to eliminate this evil.
I agree with you. As long as we continue to respect the Fourth Amendment.
Well, absolutely.
We've still got rights out there. Let's How about sanctuary cities? Where are you at on sanctuary cities? Because this omnibus bill, we fought against them. We've tried some bills in the state to protect us against sanctuary cities, and this omnibus bill has seemed to just funded them.
We need to eliminate sanctuary cities. It's a shame that you could commit crimes, you could commit theft, you could kill someone, you could move to San Francisco and nobody could ask you a question about it. I think it drives everybody nuts. That there's even the possibility of this. To be able to go and live in a sanctuary city where you don't have to worry about welfare and take your money and go spend it the way you want to. I think welfare, and I think it's about individual Christians that are supposed to take care of the poor. I'm all about feeding the poor and educating the illiterate, clothing the naked, but I will say that it's a Christian's duty and a church's duty. It is not the government's business to be doing this.
What issue really sets you apart from someone else? Do you have a specific issue that you feel strongly about? I mean, it's and you kind of fall into this trap, especially when you get into forums and debates. And I agree exactly with my candidate. Well, 9 people do not agree 100% on every issue. You can't. There's no way. Not truly in your heart. What one issue stands out that you can separate yourself from the other candidates?
Well, let's talk real quick. Let's just talk about pro-life and traditional home values. One thing that will set me apart is abortion. I'm going to tell you that I'm all for life from conception with no exceptions. That sets me apart. I'm all about making sure that no one has mentioned our senior citizens. We don't need to let senior citizens, when the government says your economic useful life is gone, take benefits away from you in the future. I think that sets me apart from the other candidates. I think it sets me apart that I have worked with the federal government, with the FDIC, in making sure that my business complies with their federal regulations. I think that sets me apart to know that I understand how to deal with federal regulations. One of the things that I just obtained right before I entered into this race is a compliance exam by the federal government, and they rated me a 1, which is in compliance is the highest rating you can get in the nation, which tells me that I understand it. I know how to work with the government, but I understand how consumers are being hurt and how we need to eliminate certain regulations.
Okay, so if you're passionate about abortion, is aborting a baby over 20 weeks, is that murder?
Absolutely.
And you think they ought to be prosecuted for murder?
Absolutely. I'm telling you, there's when I felt my son in my wife's womb for the first time, I just knew that was a miracle from God. We've got to quit killing these kids. How can God have mercy on our country when we do what we're doing today?
All right, Greg, thanks for coming. Rattle your website out real quick.
My website is greggarrettforcongress.com.
All right, Greg, thanks for coming.